Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to this very, very special segment. And in this very special segment, we are talking about the Victorian lockdown. So what's happening and, how are the other states looking at it and what's been planned for that? So as we know that the lockdown has been announced, first of all, let's hear from our Prime Minister.
The next 7 days in Victoria will be very challenging. And of course, we are very mindful of the distress and the difficulty that this will impose upon people right across Victoria as a result of what is being described, rightly I think, by the Acting Premier as a circuit-breaking lockdown, and a lockdown for 7 days that hopefully won't go as long as that, as the Acting Premier indicated to me today when we spoke earlier this morning. They'll be reviewing this regularly and the progress that they're making. And I thank him for that engagement we've had over these last few days as we've been working through these issues. This is important, though, not just for across Victoria, but also important nationally, and will demonstrate, I believe again, how well Australia deals not only with the day-to-day issues, but when challenges come, how we respond to those challenges together, work through it together, get it done, and make sure that we can move to reopen Victoria as soon as possible. Right now, the AHPPC, the medical expert panel, is meeting, as you'd expect them to, and that's why Professor Kelly is not here with us today, and he will stand up later this afternoon after that meeting and can provide you with further updates. Right now, every support is being provided to the Victorian Government that they have sought, and that has not only included the additional vaccines, which the Health Minister indicated yesterday. We have 218 ADF personnel who are in Victoria continuing to provide support under Operation COVID Assist, and I've made it very clear to the Premier that any other additional support that he requires, then he will receive, and he has indicated to me that he is seeking nothing further from the Commonwealth at this time. I want to commend the Victorian Government and the Acting Premier for their efforts over recent days in particular, and I especially want to thank the contact tracers in Victoria for the very difficult job that they are engaged in. With so many different points of contact that we have here, being able to work through that information and the many thousands of contacts they're working through, I think they're doing a tremendous job, and I commend them for the job that they are doing, remembering that there are many rings of containment to deal and protect deal with the virus and to protect Australians from the virus. There is, of course, our international borders. There is, of course, the work that is done enforcing those public health orders in the states through the quarantine system or otherwise at Howard Springs. And then there is, of course, the contact tracing regime that has been so effectively used, not just now in Victoria, but in other states that have confronted these exact same challenges, and Australians have been able to come through. So once again, we will come through. And no matter what our success has been to date, that is no guarantee or certainty against a very challenging virus that continues to test not only here in Australia, but all around the world.
So as the Prime Minister mentioned that, the challenges that we have is not only here, all around the world, but of course we know that Australia and the way we have managed it up till now has been commendable, and this measure which has been put in place is very, very needed at this very point in time, and I think that is a very, very timely move. Well, we've heard from the Prime Minister. Let's hear now from our Premier.
As Victoria has been declared a hotspot, I'd like to advise everyone that Queensland also will declare Victoria a hotspot. So from 1 a.m. tomorrow, anyone travelling to Queensland who has been in Victoria in the past 14 days will have to go into hotel quarantine. We've been through this before, and I know that people understand that we have to take these measures on the advice of Dr. Young because we want to continue to keep Queenslanders safe. Anyone who has travelled through Victoria and arrived in Queensland today before that 1 a.m. will have to observe the same lockdown conditions as they would if they were still in Victoria. So that's really important. We'll be getting those messages out to people. In relation to the flights that will be coming in, there will be police there on hand to meet any flights and check people. And likewise on our roads, especially on our borders, police once again will be doing random checks as well. So please, if you're from Victoria, you'll be in a lockdown, so you won't be able to leave, and we want to make sure that we keep Queenslanders safe during this time. The only reason to leave, of course, is if you're an essential worker and they'll require an exemption. So Dr Young will talk a little bit more about that. So on behalf of Queensland, can we wish Victoria all the very best? And I know that the next 7 days we're going to be with you every step of the way.
And as we know that the next 7 days will be very, very critical and important, and we will keep an eye out on what it will say. Now, as the Prime Minister mentioned that the Professor was not there at that press conference, but let's hear from her as she says what this outbreak is about.
So from the details of these cases, how serious in your view is this latest outbreak?
Well, it's a concern because at the moment it's not under control. And so the government's decision to go into a short lockdown, I think, makes a lot of sense. It's really important that, as Professor Sutton indicated, that the cases that they've detected are likely to have occurred, most recent, the 28th, the transmission occurred, say, last week, whereas we need to have the lockdown so that cases that are currently undetected are not then passing on the infection to others. So I think it's really important that this lockdown is happening to stop the cluster from getting larger.
Should this lockdown, though, Margaret, have happened earlier? The one in February was instigated on the back of far fewer cases.
Every situation is different, and I think initially when they were looking at these cases, they've all been linked. So when cases are linked, you can sometimes say, look, we think we know where things are. And then it gets to the stage where you're saying there's too many cases and there's too many sites where people have visited, such that you then think, look, we're going to need to bring it in. There's no absolute rules as to when you should impose a lockdown or the number of cases, the number of sites. It really does vary. It's quite nuanced. So I think it's a reasonable thing what they've done.
There are 10,000 primary and secondary contacts, we've been told. There are so many exposure sites. What did you think when you heard this in terms of how the outbreak is likely to grow?
Yeah. Well, it makes you realise that to have the circuit breaker is necessary, because for all of those people who have been exposed, if they kept on going out and about and doing their normal daily business and going out on Saturday night and the like, then the number of exposures potentially grows and grows and grows. So by restricting people's contacts, you then can really bring down the likelihood of an ongoing transmission event. There is likely to be cases over the next week. What you're trying to do is stop those cases from transmitting to other people or many other people. So that's the importance of the lockdown, as much as it's frustrating to people.
Yeah. The acting Premier also made the point that this outbreak is spreading faster than previous ones. This is because it's the Indian variant, is it?
Yes. So the Indian variant is more likely, so when you sort of think about one person, their likelihood of passing the infection on to somebody else, the Indian variant makes it that you're more likely to pass the infection on if you're infected yourself. And that sort of increase in transmission and also the amount of virus a person might be transmitting makes it that the next person is more likely to get infected. So we know from overseas that these variants make it much harder to manage. So it's really important, again, that we have the lockdown as is being done. So it, again, makes a lot of sense. It's frustrating. This is our reality, though, ongoing at least for the next 6 to 12 months, until we get vaccination levels up to a level where most people are protected, because those vaccines do two things. Number one, they stop you if you get exposed to the virus from getting sick, and number two, they stop the ongoing transmission to other people. They reduce that. They're not 100% perfect, but they're really good, really effective vaccines, and we can see clearly from overseas can stop the transmission occurring. So it's super important that people go out and get vaccinated as soon as they're able to.
So as you mentioned, that it is super important that we go and get the vaccination done as soon as we can. And of course, that too has some implications, because there are many people who have been complaining that they have been put on a wait list, that they have been put on a wait list. There are GPs who are saying that they do have vaccines in place, but people are not forthcoming. So, there's conflicting reports that are coming in. But it is very, very important that, given your circumstances and process, as soon as you can, and as soon as an appointment is given, please go and get that vaccination done. Of course, we've had reports also. I was speaking to someone just, a while ago, and someone in the family had problems with the blood clotting and things like that. So, that is also a concern, and it is quite real. Well, how fortunate are we to be here in Queensland? And if you look at what happened, a few days ago, we were at the citizenship ceremony at City Hall, and 900 plus people got their citizenship, plus there were that many more in the room to congratulate them.
Event is one of the biggest that we've had, the biggest citizenship ceremonies we've had here since 2013, would you believe? So for many, many years, it's just fantastic to see such a large event with so many people officially coming into the Brisbane family, the Australian family. These events happen approximately every 4 to 6 weeks, and they are genuinely one of the favourite parts of being the Lord Mayor of Brisbane, to welcome new people into our local community and to see in your eyes the hope and optimism and the joy that you have for being here on this special occasion. It is something that I'm grateful that I get to share with you, and I speak on behalf of Nina and also Andrew Wines as well to say that it is a very special part of our job to hold these ceremonies and to officially welcome you here. Australian citizenship is something that is more than a simple decision, it is a commitment. And it's a commitment that so many people have made from so many different parts of the world.
Of course, the point of that was to show that there were about over, close to 2,000 people in that auditorium a few days ago, and none of them had to have the mask. So that is how Queensland has managed the situation. But once again, we are, our thoughts are with everyone in Victoria, and hopefully that, that we come out of this snap lockdown for the 7 days, and maybe it might even be earlier if things go well, but it is in place now for 7 days. And of course, I have just got here the latest press release which has come from Queensland government, and allow me to read that one for you. The Queensland government has introduced restrictions for people who have had visited Whittlesea, North Melbourne. These restrictions are now expanded due to a cluster of cases which have spread into Melbourne and surrounding areas, which has put Victoria into a statewide lockdown effective tonight. We can advise that as from 1 a.m. tomorrow, 28th May, all of Victoria will be a COVID-19 hotspot. This means that the border will close to all new arrivals from Victoria at that time, except for people who have exemptions. The key message for all people who have been in Victoria in the last 14 days is to go and get tested if they have any symptoms. Anyone who arrived in Queensland today from Victoria must quarantine in their home or place they are staying from 1 a.m. tomorrow for 7 days. They can only leave home for essential reasons until Victoria re-evaluates the lockdown. A plain English version of the full restriction is being developed, and Queensland government will say that with us as soon as possible. And to stay up to date on public health directions, please visit Queensland Health website. So that's the latest press release which has just come off the press and just being handed to me now. So we will keep you up to date, and we will do if the need be a special broadcast and special bulletins to cover the situation. So once again, this has been a very special breaking news segment on the lockdown in Victoria. So until tomorrow morning, it's goodbye from me. Please remain safe and have a wonderful night.